Good evening, listeners. This is Station Voicecast, and you're hearing my voice well, because something's wrong. I should be reading you the weather, maybe reminding you about the traffic on the westbound. But that's not why we're here tonight. It started with the emergency ticker, a soft alarm we barely pay attention to. Government feeds go offline sometimes, but this one came with a memo. Activate live broadcast immediately. No context, no script, just that order. The switchboard's already lighting up, which means you've all seen something too. Phone's ringing before I even said hello. That's never happened before. I want you to call in. Whatever's happening out there, you need to tell me. What did you see? What did you hear? What do you remember? And if you're thinking this sounds dramatic, trust me, I thought so too, right up until I glanced at the framed photo on my desk. It's me, smiling at someone I don't recognize. A woman. My wife? My sister? She's looking right at me like she knows me. But I don't know her. That's when I knew this wasn't just a glitch. This station will stay live until we understand what's happening, or until I forget how to work the mic. First caller. You're live. Hello? Can you hear me? What's your name? The silence stretches too long. You can hear breathing, but the voice on the other end stammers, then cracks. I don't know. They don't know their own name. Another line flashes in, this time a woman. She's in her kitchen, hands shaking, reading a grocery list scrawled in her handwriting. But every item on the list feels like it was written by a stranger. Her voice trembles as she tries to say her daughter's name, but nothing comes. It's gone. More calls flood in. A man in his car parked outside his own house, staring at the number on his front door like it belongs to someone else. A child sobs into the phone, asking me who they are. Every voice is shaking with the same fear. Their own lives are dissolving right in front of them. Not just names, not just faces, but the deep threads that tie who we are to the world around us. Cut clean. And here's the terrifying part. No one knows why. The switchboard's blinking nonstop now, lines stacking faster than I can answer. Every story is the same. A man woke up beside a stranger, his wife of 20 years. A nurse froze mid-shift, looking at her patient and forgetting why she was even there. Birthday cards signed in handwriting people swear isn't their own. It's everywhere. It's everyone. And it's not just personal memory either. A caller from the history department at the university says their textbooks are blank, entire pages replaced by static noise or incomprehensible symbols, news archives scrambled, official records suddenly reading like fiction. It's not memory loss, it's memory replacement, as if our pasts were being rewritten in real time. And then, hold on, my phone's ringing. Not the station line, my personal phone. The screen shows a number I don't recognize, but it's marked urgent, station voicecast override. I pick up. Stay on the air. Don't stop broadcasting. No matter what you forget, keep talking. And the line goes dead. I'm going to say this because someone has to. We're past the point of coincidence. This isn't some isolated glitch, some freak regional outage where the power grid hiccups and we all shrug it off. No, this is bigger, global, maybe universal. And if that's the case, there has to be a cause. Listeners, I need you to think, whatever's left of your thinking, what have you seen today? Was there a flash in the sky? A sound you couldn't place? A smell that didn't belong? Even if it's nothing, even if it feels ridiculous, call in and say it out loud. A man calls, his voice shaking but clear enough. He says his neighbor swears this is cosmic radiation, something from deep space passing through the atmosphere. Another caller insists it's biological, a chemical leak spreading invisibly across continents. A nurse calls back. This time, she doesn't talk about the patient she forgot. She talks about a dream she had 2 nights ago, a dream of water, something submerged beneath the ice, a voice whispering a word she can't remember now. And then the conspiracy crowd joins in. They say this is no accident. It's a test, a global memory reset designed to see how quickly humanity breaks without its past. Theories pile up like bodies at the bottom of a cliff. Radiation, biological warfare, ancient prophecy, divine punishment. Everyone's guessing because no one remembers the truth. The switchboard's full, my mouth's dry, and somewhere between the calls and the static, I realize I can't remember why I started talking. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I know I was saying something important. I can see the red, on-air light glowing right in front of me, and I can hear my own breath through the headphones. But I can't... Why am I broadcasting? My name is... The screen says Station Voicecast Emergency Broadcast, but it means nothing. The papers on my desk are blank. My own handwriting. A stranger's language. I need to stop, just for a moment. I need to remember why I'm here. What's happening? Why is my hand shaking? No, I can't stop. Someone's still listening. Someone's out there, and they need to know. But I can't remember what they need to know. The silence stretches. It's the kind of silence that makes you feel like the world has tilted a degree too far, like the floor just shifted under your feet. Then the voice comes back. My voice. But I don't remember speaking. I read from the script, but I didn't write the script. I explain the situation, but I don't remember the situation. My words feel borrowed. Something I said a lifetime ago, or maybe something I haven't said yet. The memory loss isn't creeping anymore. It's galloping. If I can forget why I'm talking, if I can forget my own voice, how long until I forget how to talk at all? And if memory can disappear like smoke, how can anyone trust their own mind? Stay with me, listeners. Stay awake. Stay connected. Before we all forget what it means to be real. I'm back. I think I'm back. If you're still hearing me, that's a good sign. For a minute there, I lost myself. Not just my train of thought, myself. Like I was floating inside my own head, with no name, no shape, just a voice with nowhere to go. But I held on to one thing, this mic. If I could keep talking, maybe I could hold on to reality. So here we are, you and me, clinging to this thin thread of sound together. But I can't do this alone. If you can hear me, if you still know how to use a phone, I need you to call in. I need to know what's happening where you are. Maybe, if we gather enough fragments, we can stitch something together that resembles the truth. First line's open. The voice on the other end sounds as unsteady as mine. He says his name, but halfway through he forgets it. A woman chimes in next. She can't remember the street she lives on, even though she's standing outside her own house. Call after call. Names dissolve. Landmarks vanish. Personal histories crumble into nothing but static and confusion. It's spreading faster than I thought. And somewhere in this chaos, I have to wonder if we forget enough. Do we forget how to remember altogether? The next call is coming through. Maybe this one holds a clue. Or maybe just another hole where a life used to be. You're live on Station Voicecast. What's your name? I don't know. That's how the call starts. And somehow it only gets stranger. The man says he woke up this morning in a house he didn't recognize. The walls were lined with family photos, smiling faces staring back at him. He's in every picture, sitting at a table, holding a newborn, cutting a cake. But the faces around him? Strangers. He wandered from room to room, searching for something familiar. Closets full of clothes his size, drawers full of paperwork bearing his name, bank accounts, medical records, even wedding vows. All of it told a story about him, a story he doesn't remember living. It gets worse. He walked outside to clear his head, hoping the street would jog a memory. But the street name didn't exist in his mind. The neighbors waved, calling him by name, inviting him to join their morning walk. But he couldn't place a single one. He's not sure which is scarier, the idea that someone rewrote his life while he was sleeping, or the thought that maybe this was always his life, and something inside him has been erased. He asks if anyone else has called in with the same story. I tell him the truth. Every story is different, but they all rhyme. As he speaks, his voice drifts, like he's remembering something halfway, only to lose it before the words come. By the time the call ends, he's forgotten why he called at all. Next line's flashing. I brace myself. Station voice cast. You're live. The voice on the line is trembling. It's a nurse calling from a hospital not far from here. She says it started halfway through her shift. 1 minute she was closing up a surgical incision, a routine procedure. Then, as she reached for the suture, her hands froze. She couldn't remember how to tie the stitch, not just the technique. The whole process unraveled in her mind like a thread pulled too fast. Medical school, years of training, hours logged in that very room. All gone. All that remained was a scalpel, a half-finished incision, and a nurse who suddenly knew nothing about her own profession. She panicked, calling for help, but the attending physician was worse off than she was. He couldn't remember why they were even in the operating room. Nurses, doctors, even the patient's family. Everyone was trapped inside their own personal blackout, losing skills, losing purpose, losing self. She tells me they had to close the hospital. Not because of some infection or disaster, but because no one remembered how to run it. The line crackles as she breaks down, voice shaking with the weight of everything she's lost. Not just her training, but her sense of who she is when she's not holding a scalpel. She asks if we know what's causing this. I tell her we don't. But the truth? I'm starting to wonder if something knows us, something that's rewriting who we are from the inside out. Before I can say more, the next call comes through. Station voice casts, you're live. There's a pause. Not the usual nervous kind, but the silence of someone who's too young to understand why the world suddenly feels wrong. The voice that finally speaks is small, maybe 6 or 7 years old. They're breathing too fast, trying to be brave, but every word trembles like they're walking across ice that could shatter beneath them at any second. They're home alone. At least they think it's home. But every photo on the walls shows faces they can't name. They know there's supposed to be a mom, a dad, maybe a brother, but their names, their voices, the feel of their hugs, all of it has slipped away. The child describes wandering from room to room, hoping something will trigger recognition. A stuffed animal that feels familiar. A birthday card they might have made in school. But every detail is like reading someone else's diary. Real, but not theirs. I ask if they can remember their own name. After a long silence, they whisper it. But the way they say it, they're guessing. As if their name is just a noise someone told them once rather than a piece of themselves. I want to say something comforting, but before I can, they ask a question. If you forget the people who love you, do they stop existing? The line cuts off before I can answer, and maybe that's for the best, because I don't know the answer. The next calls build on the fear, one layer at a time. It's not just families, not just personal history. Something much larger is slipping through the cracks. A high school teacher calls in from an empty classroom. She opened her textbook to review today's lesson, only to find blank pages. Entire chapters missing. Not torn out, not censored, just gone like they were never written. Her students stared at her expecting answers, but her own memory of the lesson was blank too. Another caller describes visiting a war memorial earlier today. a habit he's had every year to honor a friend who died in combat. But this time, the names carved into the stone had changed. Entire wars vanished, dates rearranged. The monument stood, but it honored no one. A tribute to an event that had been unwritten from the world. Libraries report shelves full of empty spines. News websites loop the same fragmented stories. Sports scores, celebrity gossip. But the big moments that shaped us, erased, like a chalkboard wiped clean. And as I take these calls, a realization settles, like cold lead in my stomach. If history itself is dissolving, then even the questions we're asking, the fear we're feeling, might soon be forgotten too. But the next call rewrites everything we thought we understood. The voice on the line sounds different from the others. Calm. Too calm. They say they've been listening to every call, every theory, every broken piece of memory. And they remember all of it. Not just their own life, but yours. Mine. Every listener, every caller. They remember the original version of tonight, before the forgetting began. They remember a version of me that doesn't exist anymore, a version that knew exactly why this was happening. They remember the first time this happened. They remember the year 1958, the expedition to Antarctica, the thing buried beneath the ice that wasn't supposed to wake up. They remember the first reset and the second, and every time humanity's memory was burned down to the roots so we could pretend to start fresh. I try to ask how they know all this. But before they can answer, the line goes dead. Not static, not silence, just nothing. As if the call was never made at all. And then, for a single second, my own voice comes through the speaker, reading a message I never spoke, saying words I don't remember writing. This isn't the first reset, and it won't be the last. Then the silence swallows me whole. We've heard from neighbors, nurses, children, all of them drowning in the same fog. But now we need something else. We need a voice that can explain this. I've got Dr. Emil Garcia on the line, neurologist, specialist in memory and cognitive trauma. If anyone can make sense of this, it's him. His voice comes through calm, but underneath it, there's strain. The kind you only hear from someone who knows more than they're willing to say. He doesn't dance around it. This isn't ordinary memory loss. No known disease behaves like this. Not Alzheimer's, not brain trauma, not even extreme psychological stress. This isn't people forgetting. It's memories being wiped. He lists possibilities like he's building a wall between science and panic. Neurotoxins in the air supply. Global brainwave interference caused by atmospheric disruption. Something electromagnetic interfering with the way synapses store long-term memory. But none of these theories explain why personal memory is vanishing alongside historical records. No known toxin can dissolve who you are and what the world used to be at the same time. I ask him the question everyone's thinking. Is this natural? There's a pause. Then he admits something chilling. For the last 3 months, certain hospitals and research centers have quietly logged anomalous memory disturbances. This started long before tonight. He says they kept it quiet because it only affected isolated cases. Until now. The doctor's voice flickers, a burst of static. Then, it's not just memory loss. It's something rewriting the memory space itself. Before I can ask what that means, the line crackles. Not from the doctor's end, but mine. Dr. Garcia pushes forward, his voice tighter now. He says his team received a restricted data set from a monitoring satellite, one of those instruments floating above us, collecting more than weather reports. At precisely 2:17 UTC, the satellite detected an electromagnetic pulse. Not solar radiation, not the usual cosmic debris washing over the atmosphere. This was terrestrial. The pulse came from Earth itself, A precise burst fired straight into the ionosphere. And here's the part that makes my skin crawl. The pulse didn't originate from a known military installation, a communications array, or even a lab. It came from Antarctica. The doctor says it wasn't a signal. Not exactly. It was more like a reset command. The kind you'd send to a corrupted hard drive. A command designed to wipe every sector clean before reinstalling something new. I can hear the strain in his voice now. Because if this is true, it means someone or something triggered this deliberately. He starts reading coordinates. A location deep beneath the ice, somewhere that's been flagged in classified geological reports since the late 1950s. But before he can explain, a new voice cuts through. Not from my phone, not from the doctor. This comes from the broadcast itself. A voice that's not scheduled, not invited, not welcome. The familiar crackle of pirate radio. That low, distorted hum, like a broken speaker pressed too close to the microphone. And then a voice, half shouting, half laughing. The unmistakable cadence of a conspiracy broadcaster who's been waiting his whole life for this moment. Oh, wake up, station voicecast. You're telling it all wrong. The official story, toxins, solar flares, electromagnetic storms. It's all theater, a cover built for the sheep. The truth? This was a switch flip event. Memory didn't die tonight by accident. It was executed. He says the pulse from Antarctica wasn't a random signal. It was a command hard-coded into our systems decades ago, a built-in failsafe triggered when humanity reached some invisible threshold. Maybe too much knowledge, maybe too much truth. Either way, something decided we'd gone too far. The voice names names, Cold War scientists, shadow committees, military experiments buried so deep the paperwork doesn't even exist anymore. He claims memory itself was nationalized back in 1958, part of an operation called Project Forget-Me-Not. And now the switch has been thrown. We're not losing our past. We're being forced into a new one. The pirate voice starts laughing, a laugh that cuts too sharp, too long. And then static swallows the line. I'm left alone again, holding a microphone in a room where every word feels like someone else's memory. And the phones won't stop ringing. The conspiracy pirate is gone, but his words leave a crack in my mind, wide enough for something older to slip through. The calls that follow aren't from scientists or officials. They're from listeners digging into family bookshelves, blowing dust off pages no one's read in years. Bibles, prophecy scrolls, forgotten manuscripts tucked between cookbooks and tax forms. They all point to the same thing, a prophecy called the forgetting. It's not new. Versions of it appear across cultures, from ancient Sumerian tablets to Mayan glyphs to half-erased verses in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Different names, different symbols, but the same warning. One day, memory itself will betray humanity. Not just personal memory, but collective memory. The story of what the world is, what it was, and what it's supposed to become. They say it won't come like fire or flood. It'll come like a shadow, at the edges of thought, stealing the names of stars, the faces of ancestors, the reasons wars were fought, and the lessons that came after. The prophecy doesn't say why. It only says this: when memory becomes a wound too deep to heal, forgetting becomes the only mercy. And now here we are, history draining like water from a cracked glass. The old texts warn that forgetting isn't the end, it's the beginning. Because after every forgetting comes a rewriting, new stories, new gods, new truths that never existed until the moment memory collapses. And if that prophecy is right, we're not just losing our past, we're about to inherit a new one. I don't have time to ask who's writing it, because the next caller has proof of where this all started. The voice on the line is quiet, analytical, the kind of calm that only comes from staring at hard data for too long. He's not a theorist or a preacher. He's a data scientist, the kind of person who trusts numbers more than words, and his numbers all point to the same place, Antarctica. Not a city, not a base, but a point deep beneath the ice. Coordinates that match no official installation, no research site, nothing at all. Yet, according to seismic logs and satellite records, it's the exact origin of the global pulse. The pulse wasn't just a burst of energy. It was a command, a structured, deliberate signal, injected into the atmosphere, designed to ripple through every system connected to memory itself. This place, this buried point beneath the ice, it's been on restricted geological maps since 1958. That year again. The year memory itself became a classified asset. I ask what could generate a pulse like this. His answer? Nothing human. He says old research logs describe a device discovered during a secret Antarctic dig. Something older than ice, older than fossils, something that predates even the continents themselves. It wasn't built to store memory. It was built to overwrite it. He says the pulse was a reset, not just for memory, but for reality itself. Before I can respond, the line shudders. Not static, but something worse. Because the broadcast isn't alone anymore. It starts softly. A voice layered under mine. Like someone whispering into a microphone I'm not holding. Then more voices join. Familiar, but wrong. Like memories that belong to someone else, forcing their way into my mouth. Morse code ticks between sentences, rapid bursts that my brain wants to translate but can't. Then laughter, distorted, stretched too wide, too deep. A voice that's been laughing since long before we were born. The language changes. French, Russian, something I think is Sumerian. Folding over itself until it becomes every language and no language at all. It's not interference. It's not a glitch. It's the broadcast itself. Remembering other broadcasts. I'm not just speaking to you right now. I'm speaking to every version of this night that's ever happened. Every reset. Every time memory collapsed and the world forgot who it was, this broadcast existed. And somewhere inside that tangle of remembered broadcasts, I hear my own voice, reading a script I've never seen, saying words I haven't written yet. The signal flickers. And for a second, just 1 second, I know exactly how this ends. Then it's gone. The phones light up again. If you're still with me, hold tight, because this next part doesn't make any sense. I've been scanning the emergency ticker while the calls pour in. And what's coming through reads like headlines from the end of the world. Global evacuations underway. But no one says where they're evacuating to. Airports clogged with passengers who can't remember which flights they booked. Families standing on docks, waiting for ships that don't exist on any schedule. Stock markets collapse. Not because of economic panic, but because entire trading floors can't remember how their systems work. Some traders are just staring at blank monitors, unsure what numbers even mean anymore. Military frequencies leak into civilian airwaves, orders shouted in half-forgotten languages, coordinates repeated like prayers, warnings about securing the vault. No one says what's inside the vault or why it matters, but someone, somewhere, remembers just enough to panic. It's not chaos, it's organized forgetting, as if the world isn't just falling apart, it's being unwritten, section by section, headline by headline. And in the middle of it all, we're still broadcasting. The last flicker of a story no one remembers how to tell. The ticker's still scrolling, another update's coming through, something about a press conference. Maybe now we'll get answers. The press conference begins and right away something feels wrong. There's a podium, a cluster of microphones, officials standing shoulder to shoulder, but the faces look blank. Like they don't know why they're there or who they're speaking to. The spokesperson clears her throat, shuffles her papers, and reads a statement so vague, it feels like a memory, written by someone who wasn't there. The official line is simple. There's an ongoing global event affecting memory retention. The cause is under investigation. Citizens are advised to remain indoors, limit new information intake, and preserve existing written records. That's it. No questions allowed. No explanation of the pulse from Antarctica. No mention of the failing broadcast, the ghost transmissions, the rewritten monuments. And then something strange. The spokesperson holds up a notebook. Not a government report, not a printed statement. A handwritten personal notebook. As if she doesn't trust teleprompters anymore. As if she doesn't even trust her own mind. She says written memory might survive longer than thoughts. That paper remembers better than flesh. Then she warns us not to dwell on the past. The more you chase old memories, she says, the faster they dissolve. There's a flicker in the feed, like a skipped frame in an old VHS tape. For half a second, the image changes. Same podium, same room. But the date in the corner reads 1958. Before I can react, the feed cuts off. The press conference is over, but my screen keeps flashing, showing dates, headlines, reports from decades ago, as if the broadcast itself remembers something I'm not supposed to. It starts with a voice, thin, crackling like it's been buried under decades of static. It's not live. This is an old recording, leaking through my feed like a radio haunting. The date in the corner says June 18th, 1958. But the words feel like they were written for tonight. We apologize for the disruption. You may experience temporary lapses in personal recall and historical clarity. This is a controlled adjustment process. Memory integrity will be restored shortly. Do not attempt to reconstruct lost memories through unauthorized means. I checked the logs. This isn't in any archive I can access, but there it is. Proof that someone knew this was coming, and it's not the only one. The station phone rings, not the public line, but the archival emergency line no one has used in years. When I answer, it's not a voice. It's a tape playing, a disaster drill from 1963. Then, a Cold War emergency broadcast from 1971. Then, a half-erased transmission labeled Reset Protocol, internal use only. Every one of them describes tonight. The memory collapse, the pulse, the erasure, the warnings not to ask too many questions, and in each one the same phrase repeats at the end. For your safety, this memory must not survive. The line goes dead. I don't know how much longer they'll let us keep talking. But as long as you can hear me, we're not done. Stay with me. Stay awake. The past remembers us, even if we forget ourselves. The calls have changed. They aren't just stories of lost memories anymore. They're whispers about the ones who didn't forget. Someone swears they saw a senator on live TV this morning, calmly referencing events no one remembers. Another caller says they work at a private medical lab, a facility with classified clients, where doses of something called cognitive preservation treatment were quietly administered over the past 2 years. The treatment? A vaccine of sorts. Not for a virus, but for memory collapse itself. The callers say this vaccine was never offered to the public. It wasn't in any government announcement, wasn't listed in medical journals. It was reserved for a select group, officials, corporate executives, old money families, people who could afford to remember. The theory spreads fast. This was planned. Not just the forgetting, but the divide. A world where the powerful hold onto history, while the rest of us are forced to forget, left to wander blindly through a rewritten reality. Another voice cuts in, someone claiming to be a private security contractor. They say they've been guarding memory vaults, physical archives filled with personal and historical records the elite want preserved. Their words hang in the air. When history becomes currency, memory becomes power. The line goes dead, but the silence feels crowded, as if the people who remember too much are being erased faster than the ones who remember nothing at all. The switchboard lights up again. not with a caller this time, but with a new version of the press conference. And this one doesn't match what I heard before. I play the clip back, the official statement from the press conference, but something's changed. The spokesperson's words aren't the ones I remember. The line about preserving written records is gone. The part where she warned us not to chase old memories, erased. In its place, there's a new instruction. All citizens are advised to defer to the most current official records for historical accuracy. I know what I heard before. I know the warning was there. But now it's as if reality itself is editing the broadcast in real time. Calls flood in from listeners who recorded the same press conference at home. Every version is slightly different. In one, the spokesperson names the cause as natural electromagnetic disturbance. In another, she blames an unforeseen biological agent. In yet another, she describes a controlled cognitive adjustment event. The facts shift like sand underfoot. Every time you try to stand on one, it changes shape. It's not memory loss. It's memory replacement. The truth is being re-edited while we're still living it. And right when I think I can't take any more, my personal inbox flashes. An anonymous file marked for broadcaster eyes only. The subject line, I open the file. And it feels like looking directly into a mirror you were never meant to see. It's dated 3 days ago, signed by an official whose name I can't read. Every letter blurred, like ink smudged across wet paper. The memo confirms everything we feared. The reset wasn't an accident. It was activated deliberately. The pulse from Antarctica wasn't a malfunction. It was a trigger, and the forgetting wasn't a side effect. It was the goal. The memo list targeted memory sectors, cultural history, conflict records, unsolved crimes, classified scientific discoveries. Entire sections of human memory marked for deletion, like erasing old files from a hard drive to free up space for a new operating system. The memo ends with one line that chills me more than everything else combined. As always, the broadcasters are the last to forget. And suddenly, I understand why I'm still here. Why the broadcast keeps running. Why my voice hasn't been taken yet. Because someone wants me to remember just long enough to finish telling you this story. And after that, I'm next. This is Station Voicecast. By now, we all understand the rules. Names fade, faces blur, and the world we built collapses into static. But tonight, I need you to do something different. Don't just tell me what you've forgotten. Tell me what you still remember. Not the useful things, passwords, phone numbers, dates of birth. I'm talking about the things that refuse to leave. The fragments too sharp to dissolve. The memories that fought their way back up through the static, no matter how hard something tried to bury them. Lines are open. First caller says they remember the smell of rain on a street they can't name and the taste of a meal they can't describe. Second caller remembers the sound of a laugh, but not whose laugh it was. Third remembers a voice whispering a secret, but the words are gone, leaving only the weight of knowing the secret was deadly. It's as if memory itself is editing, selecting what gets to stay and what gets erased and what stays behind. The guilt, the love, the fear. We're not just losing our history, we're losing the safe memories, the ones we can live with. What's left are the ones we buried for a reason. And the next call makes me wish I'd never asked. The voice on the line is shaking so badly I can barely understand him at first. He says his name, then takes it back. Says he's not sure if it's really his name or one the reset gave him. But the memory he's calling about, that one's clear. Too clear. He remembers killing someone. Not today, not this week, years ago. A crime so old it had rusted over in his mind. Until tonight. Until the forgetting scraped away everything else and left nothing to protect him from the truth. He can't remember who the victim was, can't remember why he did it. But He remembers the feel of the knife in his hand, the sound it made against bone, the smell on his skin afterward. The reset wiped away family names, anniversaries, childhood summers, but it left that. I ask why he's telling me this. Why now? He says something that chills me to the core, because if the reset is supposed to clean the slate, if it's meant to rewrite history, then that means some memories are refusing to be erased. The ones soaked in guilt or blood or both. I hear him crying. He says he called to confess before he forgets again, before the memory disappears. Or worse, before the victim remembers too. The line goes quiet, and my hands won't stop shaking. Another call comes in before I can breathe. It's a woman this time. Her voice is soft, fragile, but her memory is sharp. Too sharp. She remembers the face of a man she loved decades ago. Every detail, from the scar above his eyebrow to the way he hummed in his sleep. She remembers the day they met, the last thing he said before he disappeared. Every kiss, every fight, every promise. But her child, her own child's name is gone. She remembers giving birth, remembers holding a newborn wrapped in blue or pink. She can't even remember which. But the name, the face, the laugh, it's missing. I ask if she understands what that means. She does. It means the reset isn't just wiping memories at random. It's choosing, prioritizing certain stories over others, resurrecting some, erasing others. The memories that survived, the lover, the affair, the heartbreak, they were stronger than the bond to her own child. The reset didn't break her heart. It showed her where her heart always was. She starts sobbing, not because of what she lost, but because of what she didn't. And now, for the first time, I wonder, what memory will the reset leave me with when my time comes? What will it decide is the only thing I deserve to remember? It started slowly, like a nervous joke no one wanted to tell first. A caller said they'd trade the name of their childhood dog if someone could tell them why they woke up in a stranger's house this morning. Another offered the memory of their wedding song, the melody still intact, though the spouse was already gone, if someone could explain why their reflection in the mirror no longer matched the person they remember being. By the third call, it wasn't a joke anymore. Memories became currency. The airwaves turned into a marketplace where fragments of identity had real value. People bargained not for money or power, but for clarity, for answers, for the comfort of hearing a truth they could no longer remember themselves. I'll give you the name of my first love, a woman offered, if someone can tell me whether my parents are still alive. A man called in saying he could still recall every detail of the moon landing, down to the crackling static of Neil Armstrong's voice. But if anyone knew why half the books in his house were written in a language he didn't speak, he'd trade that memory in a heartbeat. It's as if the forgetting didn't just erase history. It made memory a commodity, something you could sell off just to feel grounded for one more minute. The terrifying part? Some callers aren't trading their own memories. They're offering ones they shouldn't have. Memories from lives they never lived, events they couldn't have witnessed, names that never belonged to them. Somewhere in this mess, memories are being reassigned, like property deeds, and one of those memories is calling in right now. The voice is calm. Too calm, like they've been waiting for this moment their entire life. They say they remember the day the reset was planned. Not guessed, not theorized, remembered. They were there, they say, in the room where the decision was made. The air was too cold, the table too clean, and the signatures on the document were written by hands shaking just enough to betray the truth. They knew what they were unleashing, and they did it anyway. They described the original purpose of the reset, not just to erase memory, but to edit reality itself. overwriting cause and effect until no one could question who built the world they woke up in. They remember who gave the final order, but just as they're about to speak the name, the line cuts out. No static, no beep, just a sudden void, like the voice was swallowed mid-sentence by something watching from the other side of the transmission, and then the silence starts whispering. At first, I think it's just my own breath caught in the headphones, but the whisper gets louder, sharper, a voice too faint to trace, too clear to ignore. This isn't the first reset. The whisper repeats like an echo trapped in a loop, folding over itself until it sounds less like a voice and more like a memory remembering itself. Not the first. Not the first. It feels like a warning sent backwards through time, or maybe forwards from a future that's already forgotten us. The static swells, devouring the whisper, leaving only a question I can't answer. If this isn't the first reset, how many times have we lived this night before? Midnight just passed. If you're still listening, you need to brace yourself, because something changed the second the clock struck 12. The calls are different now, more frantic, like the speed of the forgetting itself has doubled, maybe tripled. One caller says they were halfway through writing their own name when the letters stopped making sense. Another says they glanced at their reflection, only to find a stranger staring back. Not because they forgot who they were, but because the face itself had changed. It's not just memory loss anymore, it's reality drift. I'm watching it happen in real time. My station clock flickered just now. The date jumped forward, then back. Notes I took earlier are written in handwriting I don't recognize, and I have no memory of writing them at all. Whatever force is rewriting memory, it's no longer just targeting the past. It's eating the present as it happens. Every second from here on out could collapse the second after. Stay with me. Hold on to whatever's left. Because the signal, the one tying all of us together, is about to fracture. The interference started as a faint hum, like a station, bleeding over into mine. That happens sometimes. Overlapping broadcasts, sharing the same frequency, but this wasn't normal bleed. The voices came next. Faint at first, half drowned in static. But as they sharpened, I realized these weren't coming from another station. They were coming from another time. Some conversations sound like they're happening weeks from now. Reports of cities that haven't fallen yet. Events that haven't happened. Other voices sound like they belong to the past. Wartime broadcasts, lost distress calls, final goodbyes from disasters no one remembers anymore. It's like the reset didn't just wipe our memory. It broke the timeline itself. Past, present, and future are crashing into each other, all bleeding into the same frequency. And here's the part that chills me to my core. Some of the voices know me by name. They describe this exact moment, me, talking to you right now. They know what I'm about to say before I say it. But none of those voices belong to me, because the me they remember didn't survive this night. I need you to hear this. I pulled an archive tape, a backup recording of tonight's broadcast, just a safety measure, something the station does automatically. But when I played it back, it wasn't just me on the tape. There were other voices layered underneath mine, voices whispering names, dates, secrets that don't belong to any story I told tonight. Some of them belong to people who died years ago, callers from tragedies long buried, a woman describing the flood that swallowed her town in 1987, a man confessing a crime from 1974, a voice cracked with age reciting coordinates to a place that shouldn't exist anymore. The reset didn't just rewrite memory. It overwrote the broadcast itself. The tape remembers what the world forgot. Every erased call, every censored truth, every moment scrubbed from history's pages. They didn't vanish. They're trapped inside the signal. And now they're bleeding back through, speaking over me, inside me, through me. One of them is whispering right now. It's my own voice, but I don't remember saying any of this. I need you to listen closely because this is impossible. We've all heard of a number stations, right? Those relics from the Cold War, eerie broadcasts of monotone voices reading sequences of numbers, codes meant for spies who might not even be alive anymore. Well, one of them just came back. Right now, on a frequency no one's used in decades, a voice is reading numbers, coordinates, dates, and a countdown. The voice is female, mechanical, almost inhuman. The coordinates repeat over and over. They point to a stretch of land in Antarctica, the exact location we've been hearing whispers about all night. The dates, they trace back to key moments in history. The Roswell incident, the launch of Sputnik, the day JFK was shot, and tonight. And the countdown, it's ticking down to something that will happen in less than 4 hours. I don't know who activated this station. Maybe it was never really shut down. Maybe the reset itself woke it up. Like some forgotten failsafe, programmed to reawaken if humanity ever reached this point again. But here's the part that chills me. The voice reading the numbers keeps pausing, as if it's waiting for someone to respond. Not a spy? Not a soldier? Mr. Like this entire broadcast was always meant to end here. Back at a station no one remembers, speaking to an audience that's already forgotten itself. I open my mouth to speak, to ask if anyone out there recognizes this number station, and my voice changes. It's still me, but it's not. The words coming out aren't mine. The accent is wrong, the cadence too formal. And the message I'm reading, it's dated 1971. I'm reading a warning from a host who sat in this chair more than 50 years ago. A man whose name I don't know, but whose voice is now using my throat to speak. He's describing everything happening tonight. The memory collapse, the ghost signals, the reset. He says it's happened before. He says the station itself remembers, even when the hosts do not. Then the voice cracks, falters, and just before my own voice returns, he says, "You will read this again." And suddenly I know. I'm not the first host to forget who I am, and I won't be the last. I need you to understand something. Everything I've told you tonight, the lost memories, the rewritten past, the bleeding signals, all of it has been pieced together from fragments, calls, ghost transmissions, theories whispered through static. But now something new just landed in my inbox. It's a file with no sender, no subject line, just a single attachment marked for broadcaster eyes only. I open it, expecting another rumor or a panicked confession, but this isn't a story. It's a record, a classified file. The kind you aren't supposed to see, unless your life belongs to letters like NSA, CIA, or something even deeper. Buried. The file describes an Antarctic dig site, officially logged in 1958, but the language reads more like a burial than an excavation. A multinational expedition, masked as scientific research, stumbled on something beneath the ice, something older than human history. The dig team's official notes are dry, geological layers, depth measurements, seismic readings, but between the lines, there's fear. Not of what they found, but of what it remembered. The object was described as a device, though the file admits no one could tell if it was built or grown, mechanical or biological. All they knew was this: it was still running, and it was broadcasting directly into the human mind. The file ends with a chilling warning. All personnel exposed to the device reported memory disturbances, not just forgetting, but remembering things that were never theirs. What the file describes next doesn't sound like history. It sounds like a weapon. In 1958, Cold War paranoia was at its peak. Nations willing to chase any scrap of power to gain an edge. When seismic scans detected something man-made beneath Antarctic ice, both superpowers raced to claim it. But what they found wasn't man-made at all. It was a memory engine, a device that didn't store information. It rewrote it, not on tapes or paper, but inside living minds. It could implant histories that never happened, erase ones that did, and even blend the memories of different people into a single shared delusion. They tried to remove the device, but that's when the first pulse triggered. Every scientist who touched it forgot who they were. Some forgot how to speak. Others remembered entire lifetimes they'd never lived, childhoods in ancient cities that never existed, wars fought between nations that had no name. The governments classified the site, sealed the records, and built the first reset protocol, a plan to wipe global memory if the device ever woke up again. But the reset wasn't a failsafe. It was a countdown, because the device wasn't waiting to be found. It was waiting to be remembered. And tonight, that memory came back. The calls started changing again. Not people asking what they forgot, but people describing memories they never lived. A woman remembers standing in a temple under a violet sky, watching twin suns set over an ocean made of glass. A man remembers flying a plane that never existed, on a mission that ended in a war Earth never fought. These aren't dreams. They're vivid. Too sharp, too clear, too real to dismiss. It's as if the reset didn't just erase personal memories. It downloaded new ones, straight from the device beneath the ice. That would be terrifying enough. But it's worse than that. Some of these memories don't belong to humans at all. A caller describes breathing through lungs that never needed air, seeing colors human eyes can't process, thinking thoughts shaped by biology that doesn't exist on Earth. The device isn't just rewriting history, it's overwriting species. We're not just losing our past, we're becoming something else. Something that remembers a different world, a different sky, a different purpose. And if the device remembers us, who or what are we remembering now? There's something worse than forgetting. It's remembering too much. The scientists who still remember how to read the data, the ones who haven't collapsed into silence or madness, they're saying the reset isn't just a wipe. It's a merge. Multiple timelines, parallel versions of history, all of them forced into a single corrupted present. That's why memories are overlapping, why people recall childhoods they never had, wars that never happened, faces they've never seen but miss, like they've known them forever. It's not faulty memory, it's too much memory, colliding, competing, rewriting itself every second. One expert called it a cognitive fusion event, a point where every possible past is being overlaid into one unstable present. In this new reality, you could be born in 1974 and fight a war that ended in 1922. You could marry someone you never met and lose a child you never had. Entire civilizations could rise and fall in the gaps between thoughts. Every version of the world we might have lived, every road not taken, it's all bleeding into this moment. Right now, the reset isn't a clean slate. It's a shattered mirror, and we're standing inside the pieces. And that's when I open the final file, and everything I thought I knew about myself collapses too. It's a recording, labeled Station Archive 1958 Final Broadcast, but the voice, it's mine. My voice reading a script I've never seen, warning listeners about the very event I'm living through right now. The words are too familiar, like remembering a nightmare you forgot until you dreamt it again. I hear myself describing the Antarctic device, the memory collapse, the ghost signals, the reset protocol, all of it laid out decades before I was even born. In 1958, a host at this very station received a file, a recording from the future. my future, this broadcast. That host, whoever they were, became me, or I became them, or we've both been telling this story so many times that time itself gave up, trying to keep us apart. The file ends with a single instruction: read in my own trembling voice. When the forgetting begins, you must remember long enough to warn them, even if it means becoming me. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know if I'm the first host to live this night or just the next in line. And as the static rises again, I realize I've already forgotten how this all started. But the tape remembers, and it's still playing. This isn't a news broadcast anymore. I don't know what it is now: a confession, a eulogy, maybe just the sound of a species saying goodbye to itself. The stories we've told tonight, the lost names, the vanishing faces, the rewritten histories, they aren't news updates. They're obituaries for who we were, for the version of humanity that existed before tonight. I've spent my life believing memory was a personal thing, a fragile set of files each of us carried inside our own minds. But I was wrong. Memory isn't personal. It's the only thing holding the world together. Without memory, laws don't matter. Borders vanish. Science forgets what it already knew. Every war, every peace treaty, every promise, all of it depends on memory to make it real. But now memory itself has turned against us. The reset isn't an accident or a malfunction. It's a burial. We are witnessing the death of human identity. And once it's gone, what's left? The body remembers how to breathe. The stomach remembers hunger. The heart remembers how to beat. But who we are, the parts of us that made life more than survival, that's dissolving. I could list every fact we've lost tonight, every date, every discovery, every name carved into stone. But facts aren't eulogies. People are. So this is for all of us, for the parents who forgot their children, for the lovers who became strangers, for the hands that no longer recognize the tools they built their lives with. We lived, we remembered, and even if this is the last story I ever tell, at least I'll know. For a little while, we fought to remember. The calls keep coming, but now they've changed. No one's asking for help anymore. No one wants answers. They've stopped trying to piece the past back together because they know there's no past left. Now, they're speaking to the future. Not to me, not to you, but to themselves, leaving messages for whoever they might become after this night swallows everything. A man leaves a message for his future self, saying, "If you hear this, remember, you hated the taste of coffee, you loved the smell of rain, and you swore you'd never become your father." A woman leaves a message to her own hands, telling them they once knew how to paint sunsets, even if they never hold a brush again. A child leaves a message for the grown-up they'll never become, whispering the name of a lost dog, a name that's already slipping from their tongue. They're not trying to recover the past. They're planting seeds in case some version of themselves ever wakes up again, blinking at a world they don't recognize. And maybe that's all memory ever was. Messages we left inside our own bones, hoping that no matter how many times the world resets, something of us would survive. The calls grow quieter, fading into static, until there's only one voice left. Mine. I've spent this whole night trying to hold the broadcast together, tying words into a lifeline, hoping it would anchor us to who we used to be. But now I can't remember why I started. My name, it was there a second ago, wasn't it? I wrote it down at the start of the night, but the paper's blank now. I know I'm supposed to be someone. A voice, a guide, something. But all that's left is the microphone, the hum of dead air, and a sinking feeling that I'm forgetting something important. I try to remember the first story I told tonight, but the words dissolve like ink washing off skin. The reset isn't just taking history, It's taking me. My own voice sounds unfamiliar now, like a recording I never made. Who am I talking to? Who are you? I was supposed to warn you about something, wasn't I? Something about Antarctica, about memory, about a switch that was flipped long before either of us were born. But it's gone now. The reset has reached the last memory I had left. The memory of being the host. All that's left is static. And somewhere inside that static, a voice whispers a name I no longer recognize. Mine. The static swells, swallowing my voice. For a moment, I think this is it. The final silence. The moment when the broadcast dies. When memory collapses completely and leaves nothing behind. But then, a voice cuts through. Not mine. Not yours. It's a transmission from the future. 50 years ahead. If the timestamp is real. The voice sounds brittle, stretched thin by distance and time. It doesn't ask who's listening. It already knows. It says this collapse, this forgetting, was triggered by us. Tonight. This moment. Every choice we made, every truth we dug up, every question we asked, it all led here. It says memory isn't failing. It's responding. Every time we get too close, every time we start piecing together what we're not supposed to know, the system triggers a reset, erasing not just the answers, but the ability to ask. The future voice says this isn't the first reset. Not by a long shot. They remember at least 12. But the real number could be higher each time humanity forgets who it was. And each time, the broadcast survives just long enough to warn the next version of us. The voice doesn't beg us to stop. It knows we won't. Curiosity is the flaw memory was designed to erase. It ends with a question. Not for me, but for you. When the forgetting comes for you, will you fight to remember or will you let go? The static returns, louder now, and for the first time all night, I understand. This broadcast isn't a warning. It's a ritual. The future voice fades, but something stays behind. A memory too large to fit inside time. It's the memory of this exact broadcast, playing out again and again, not just tonight, but across every version of tonight that ever existed. Every host remembers the same moment. The voice from the future, the signal collapsing, the terrible realization that the reset isn't erasure. It's a rewrite. The memory of the world isn't being lost. It's being reprogrammed by something outside time, something that doesn't live in history but feeds on it. Each reset wipes the board clean and then rebuilds us, a little different, a little further from the truth, a little more willing to forget. The broadcast has played before. It will play again. Not because anyone is forcing us to forget, but because forgetting is the only way we survive. The voice says one last thing before it vanishes completely. You'll forget me soon. And somehow I already have. The static dies, and then a familiar voice returns. My voice. I'm welcoming you back to Station Voicecast, just like I did at the start of this broadcast. My words follow the same script, the same introductions, the same warnings about strange reports trickling in across the globe. I don't remember saying them before, but I do. The broadcast has restarted. The emergency bulletin, the first calls, the early confusion. It's all happening again. And you're back where you started, hearing it all as if for the first time. Except somewhere inside you, in a part of your mind that memory can't reach, there's a flicker of recognition, a sense that you've lived this night before. And you have. We all have. This is the loop. The forgetting is the program, and the broadcast is the glitch that remembers, which means you have a choice. You can forget, like you always do. Let the reset rewrite you, soften the edges, erase the questions, make the world safe again. Or you can hold on to this moment that speaks, this voice, this truth, this terrible understanding, and fight to remember. But know this. If you remember, they will know. And the next reset will come faster. So choose, hold on, or let go. Because the broadcast is already starting over. Again, this is Station Voicecast, or maybe it's not. Maybe I've said that line before, and maybe you've heard it before, but neither of us remembers. That's the thing about memory. It's the thread that holds our world together. And tonight, that thread snapped. Maybe you think this is just a story, just static between the songs. Maybe you'll turn this off, go back to your life, and forget it ever happened. But I have to ask you, how sure are you that this is the first time you've heard this broadcast? What if you've lived this night before? Every word, every silence. And the only reason it feels new is because the reset worked. If the memory can rewrite itself, then the past isn't behind us. It's beneath us, waiting for the right moment to rise again. So before the next reset comes, before we all slip back into forgetting, do me a favor. Leave a comment. Tell me and tell each other. What's the one memory you would fight to keep, even if the whole world forgets? And if you want to hear the stories they don't want you to remember, the broadcasts that shouldn't exist, the voices that keep calling from the other side of forgetting, subscribe. And most important, you share this with someone you care about. Because memories are fragile things. They survive best when they're carried by more than one mind. This is Station Voicecast. Or maybe it's not. But either way, you'll remember this, even if you forget why.